What's up, everybody? Welcome to Omnic Lab. This week is episode 108, and we are talking triple tank comp. Some people call it the meatball. Some people say it's a triple. But this week, we've got a guest with us from the EU. And no, sorry to disappoint, it's not the Doomfist man again. It's LeeBomb from the Cavalry. What's up, Lee?
Hey, how you doing? I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good to have you here. First time guest for you, but we've had others on Cavalry on before, as Andres is frequently with them on our recap. And also no stranger to our game nights and yelling at other game members at wee hours of the morning in the UK. So we really appreciate that, by the way. They need a good look.
and Reinhardt Menace, not forget. Every time this man steps on the Reinhardt, it's a force to be reckoned with.
I was actually playing Pugs on my tournament I run, and I got 72 kills on Reinhardt.
What?
Goodness,
that's like my season high on my best hero. DPS, by the way.
Reinhardt meta, man.
I normally play Genji or something because we play on NA, and with the ping, it kind of handicaps me, so I'm not rolling, but they locked Genji, and I'm like, right, all right, you get Reinhardt.
Well, we all know how that worked out for them. Joining us is, per usual, is Andres from the great state of the Peach. What's up, Andres?
What's up? That's right. It's kind of a sunny day over here, even though you can't see it. My room is really dark right now because it's being covered by this huge shadow. But yeah, it's a beautiful day. I should turn on the light, actually. I look like I'm in the darkest room. I'm just like Gollum over here, all sad.
Who needs coffee when you can shade yourself in darkness? And I'm coming in from a nice rainy and humid day from Japan in the southern area. I was actually doing a lot of work today with my teachers in the afternoon. We had a 40-minute schedule, and boy, I hate abbreviated schedule. It's awful. It's like they always do this right before exams, and then I have to go do we have an English club after school, so I have to come up with some idea to help them practice, and then after that they're working on a English exam that they have to take for proficiency with my third years, which are the seniors in the high school trimesters. So they've got their exam coming up in about a week and a half. So I've been very busy today and then biking home in the rain, but it was a nice, good conclusion to start podcasting with you guys after having some sashimi dinner with my wife. Just to make you guys just a tad bit more jealous, I guess.
It's like typhoon season over there, right? It's like crazy waters over the place.
Yeah, typhoon season should be kicking up in the next week, and then all July and early August, we should be getting typhoons about every week.
That's crazy.
So we'll see how it goes.
I was jealous with the rain because, being from the UK, I actually enjoy the rain because we don't get rain, we get showers. It's a little bit of rain. It's annoying, but it's not raining. I actually enjoy the rain. But as soon as you have to go outside and oh god, no, I'll pass.
Yeah, the rain is nice when you are inside,
especially without a car.
Yeah, when you're inside and cozy is good, but when you have to be outside, it's like freaking rain.
Just think about those guys with those big rain suits, the pants and the jacket with the little visor on them. And you're sitting on a little bicycle with a front basket and a back basket. That's me. On the street in the middle of a bunch of rice patties, angry, riding in the morning about 8 o'clock.
Be scared.
Anyways,
of that.
We should talk about some Overwatch, shall we?
Let's do it.
If you want.
All right. This week, guys, we're going to be talking about the triple tank comp and a lot of this. And you might be wondering why we're bringing LeeBomb on. Well, let's actually get into that real quick. So, Lee, tell us a little bit about your background, your pedigree, what you like to play for those that are unengaged, and then maybe even some of your contacts with Wawas and how you kind of got into coaching as well.
Well, I started playing Overwatch Season 1. I didn't start in the beta as all these cool kids do. I always say all the time, I started in beta. But no, I started in Season 1. technically a Bastion main, but I did have second most hours on Reinhardt. Both of them were on 4 hours. Didn't play too much. Was probably in silver back then. Placed gold season 2 and climbed a rank per season pretty much at that point. Got up to GM in season 6. Then kind of spent my time coaching. So I technically wasn't GM from season 6 through from 7 through 9. I was 39, like 90. Because I just wasn't playing. I was spending time coaching and doing projects such as the cavalry. And then this season I decided, no, I want that rank back. So I got that rank back.
Nice.
I was playing today just before the episode. Season 6, when I really started coming into this more arena of gaming. So I came into, when I hit GM, I found out about WoWs and thought, you know what, screw it, I'll put some time into coaching. It was pretty fun, to be honest.
Nice.
Still is pretty fun. I've started doing coaching, not just through WoWs, I do coaching through WoWs sometimes, but I started to do some more long-term projects with other students for trying to get them to improve instead of over one session, which is generally what we get on WoWs, through many sessions over weeks. Outside of WoWs, obviously, because I get paid for that. But I still do it through WBC itself because it does offer its benefits of I just get a session with a student, normally just one session, which is nice to see different people. Before that, I've never really been into esports gaming, never played League of Legends, never played CSGO, never played Dota. I've never really played esports before Overwatch.
Overwatch is your first big esports passion?
Mm-hmm. First time I've ever gone into an esports game at all. I mean, before that, I used to play Call of Duty and, you know, like whatever we used to play in our friend group, but we never really took it too seriously.
What about the heroes that you play? You're known to be a pretty good tank.
I'd like to think so. So I play majority on Reinhardt. Peaked 4.2 with him. And then I started, once I got to there, I got a new account and started playing a lot of other heroes. So I can play quite a lot of heroes competently, but my strength still lies in the main tank of Winston and Reinhardt, Orisa if needed, but I'm not honestly the biggest fan of Orisa.
Yeah.
And I like my Zarya. Zarya is one of my favorite heroes to climb with, especially at the moment, because you can just punish them for throwing damage at the wrong time. And I also do play some main supports, so, you know, a little bit of Mercy, a little bit of Moira, I guess, but we don't see too much Moira at the moment.
Nice. And that's kind of like the reason why you're here. You are very knowledgeable with all of your tanks, and the composition we're going to be talking about today, the triple tank, revolves around that, and specifically around Reinhardt a lot of the time. That anchor tank that everyone can follow and basically exploit the biggest strengths of him. So I think you'd be when we were thinking about it, I was thinking, who could be a good guest for this episode? And I thought about you. I was like, I know a good Reinhardt for this.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into stuff, we typically need to do some housekeeping. So the first thing in housekeeping is game night, which all of us are trying to make, end of June, the 29th. Be there anytime after about 2 p.m. Eastern is kind of when things start going. People start playing comp together, roll into some free-for-all in-house deathmatch. Then they maybe try to get their first group together, second group, third group. Things get into be about full swing somewhere around 7 to 8 Eastern is typically when we have our first full lobby going. Then over the course of the evening, it gets into the late night. People start playing other games. People start getting into third and fourth lobbies that are packed with over 15 people. And our PlayStation 4 typically has had 1 to 2 lobbies pretty much every game night, just constantly going. Our Xbox community has 1.5, I've heard. It just kind of depends on the month. But then we also have our special sponsor and partners. We have Top Score Solutions, aka Ben, or I Need Peeling. He's offering the business consultation in the esports field. If you're aspiring to be a coach, you want to start a team, you want to develop an app or in a service, you want to boost a subscriber base, or you just want to work in esports in general, you can visit his website, topscoresolutions.com. Grab him on Twitter at Topscore Esports, or you can join his Discord server that is attached to all of his channels. Ben's got a master's in sports management and finance and data analytics, and he has lots of experience with sales, marketing, and company development. His services are free. This is an advertisement that is paid for free services, ladies and gentlemen, and they will remain that way as long as the demand allows it. And get hype, get on it as soon as you can if this is something you're looking for. We also have our buddy over at Omnic Meta. Switch is still producing regular content over there, albeit pretty sparse right now. He is working on some more things. However, on June 14th, he just released something 5 days ago called Hero Specialization Analysis for Season 10. So this is breaking down players who have specialized in a hero, and also saying that if a hero is a main on a hero, that means that they play over 50% of their games on that, and a one-trick account qualified as playing more than 80% of their total account time on that given hero. So just some really interesting stats about win rates, about hero mains, about who are the most common heroes to main and in what tiers, etc., etc. Just some really interesting analysis for you to go check out. So please go check that out on his website, omnicmeta.com. And also check out our Overwatch League podcast sister show that Andres heads up called the Owl Recap with Bobby and Mel. And boy, did they have a crazy week talking about the finals this week. Andres, do you want to give them a quick tease before we move in?
Yeah, we had a super awesome episode last night. Icy Sorrow from Enter the Iris joined us as guest. She was able to be in the ground floor at the Burbank Arena. She got to experience the whole thing that we experienced a couple months ago. So I'm really happy for her. She got to meet a lot of the players and was at the press conference as well. So she was there at the episode. She told us all about it. We talked about the finals, the crazy turn of events, Dallas Fuel redemption story. If you're a Dallas Fuel fan, I'm sure that you're pretty happy, even though they didn't quite win. But, you know, they came back, baby.
All right, Lee, Andres, let's get into talking about some more tanks, some more supports, and maybe a Widowmaker in between. So let's get into it. We have the triple tank set up that you're going to be typically seeing with this composition, and then you're going to see some flex rolls roll around the position where Brigitte has now kind of stationed herself within this given setup of team composition build. Okay, so again, this is a build that has kind of developed over time around a map setup. So we're going to start with strengths and weaknesses, kind of what the choices should be on the table for your tank, your support, what the approach and style of play is going to kind of adjust to be. And then we're going to start breaking down what I kind of alluded to, which is kind of mods or hybrids of this build that aren't necessarily the quote unquote triple. And then we're going to kind of close out our thoughts and general feelings for how this is developing currently, and then maybe even what we might be predicting with the new Symmetra build coming out soon. So let's start out with strengths and weaknesses, shall we? Lee, you can take us away right here, unless Andres, you want to have any other introductions.
No, we can kick it off with the strengths of this comp. I can throw out a few that I think that are particularly good, and we can move on from there. This comp, like Rob said, involves a triple tank and a triple support. It's a composition that's been around for a minute, but I think that right now it's probably in its final form. It works really well. You have a lot of tools to make it work, and everything kind of falls into place with the current heroes that we have. One of the major strengths of this composition is the resilience and the amount of health that you have. Obviously, by running triple tanks, everyone's going to have a really large health pool, which makes them very safe against burst damage, for example. Nobody's going to get bursted down too quick. Also, with the triple support, you have an immense amount of healing to be able to keep up these health pools nice and healthy. And because you're running 3 tanks, you also have a ton of defensive tools in the terms of shields and ways to aid your allies so that they might not die. Your squishier heroes, like your supports, for example. So very resilient comp. It's incredibly good at fighting at the point and at close range. It's very good at contesting objectives just because the whole team can basically be at one point in particular compared to other comps that like to be a little more spread out. Close quarters, this comp is very scary. They like to take the fight up close and bring it up to you. They have a lot of damage. if they can cut the gap and get on your face. But aside from that, Lee, you want to add anything here?
I think you were pretty much spot on there. So any comp where you're forced to play in a Reinhardt's face is a comp where you're not going to have. So I can tell you from playing Reinhardt, Reinhardt can do a hell of a lot of damage, and people don't realize this. They don't give him credit for the amount of damage. He can essentially kill a squishy in 3 seconds or less if you do the right combo.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
ridiculous.
And not only that, his hammer can hit multiple targets, which is something you can't say about a lot of other people's weapons.
Yeah, that cleave damage really does hit hard. So your strengths are if you force them to fight you close. So 2CP is a really good example of this. Something like Temple of Anubis, instead of trying to go to the flank left or flank right, you just walk straight through a main with a Lucio, just speed boost straight to point and force them to fight you. Because they have to defend the point, right? They have to defend. If they're not prepared for this, if they're not prepared for your strategy of just forcing them to fight you on point, they're not going to win that fight because they won't have the strategy ready.
I'm glad that you brought that up because part of the strength of this composition relies on the attack, not so much in the defense, but people like running this composition on the attack because of what you said. This composition forces the fight. Is the type of composition that walks through the choke point and beelines to the point. They're not trying to flank through one side. They're not trying to do anything fancy. They keep it very honest. They're like, guys, we're very resilient. We're just going to walk through this door and step on the point. You guys better come and fight us or we're just going to cap it.
And the crazy thing is if something challenges your Reinhardt, Lee will talk about this for sure, is that Reinhardt isn't working with a single or a duo, like as a small unit, like, or even necessarily as a deathball style of comp, because deathball styles will typically have kind of a medium to long range adjustment feature. Whereas this, like Lee was saying, you're super close, you're right in the action. If they're not next to you, they're not generally going to die very well. But if they decide that they're going to challenge you and you get off a stun or an ultimate from the Reinhardt first or the Zarya, then lights out. That guy's dead. That lady's dead. Whoever it is, it's like running into a Mack truck. That's basically what happens. You're going to move, you're going to go through the choke, and if something's in your way, and if it's more than one target, it typically ends up being just a crazy brawl. But if it's one or two targets, they're toast. So if you're out of position and you're close, you're dead.
It's especially what Reinhardt and the tanks are really good at is brawls. So forcing you into a brawl is not somewhere you want to be. But, the opposite of that is they're very weak at range. So that means they're terrible at defending because you can just force them to play a range battle and they will lose,
Yes. Well, let's talk about the weaknesses, and that is one of the main ones. This composition lacks a lot of range and a lot of verticality. It doesn't have a lot of freedom to move in the vertical plane, and if you're trying to take a fight at range, this composition is not what you're looking for. Open spaces where this composition has to stand still for a prolonged period of time is usually very bad. It's more of a proactive comp where they want to be moving all of the time. They want to clean up any hallways, any rooms, and just kind of like tear through as they're going through. And like we said, take the fight to the point where they can force the other team to have to come into the point and fight them on their own terms. If they have to fight on the enemy's terms and have to be spread out for some reason, or like you said, fight at range, suddenly this composition starts looking a little bit lackluster.
It's very specialized in its ability to take points, and it's pretty good on King of the Hill, especially, I want to say, Lijiang Gardens and Night Market, because they're enclosed and they force you to fight on the point pretty much. So you can force a fight there, but as soon as it comes to playing somewhere like Watchpoint and Gibraltar, you're not going to have a good time with this comp, really, because there's too much open space for the enemy teams to take advantage
or
of.
Dorado comes to mind, too, in that sense.
Yeah, Dorado, too. The end of first point, not too much, but the start of first point, if you can get a death grip on a 3-3 comp at the start of Dorado, or the start of second point, then you're really they're not going to have fun. They're going to have to change, really. if you play it right.
So Lee, can we get into some specifics here now? Let's talk through like hero selection based off of the map, right? Because you have a lot of flexibility with the tanks, not so much with the supports, right? Because you have one or two of the supports you're pretty much cruxing on with this comp. And you're also making that decision based off of two calls, right? You're saying we're gonna run 3 tanks. And so that's the first lens that we're gonna start approaching this by running 3 supports with it. And the second lens is what the map is, right? And how you want to interpret not only if the tanks you're running are good on that map, but how you want to approach both healing them and also aiding them in kind of what we talked about a little bit, which is the death ball style of approach with the supports and keeping everyone alive.
Well, if it comes to choosing a tank, your main tank is going to be Reinhardt. Winston is far too squishy. Winston will get his face melted because the way his character's designed, his head is where his chest is as well. It's pretty much directly in line. So anything at range will just melt him.
And it always seems to me that Reinhardt is the one spot that is always locked in. It seems that every other spot in this composition can be a little bit flexible. Even the supports, even though there's some ideals, even on the supports you can play around a bit. But if there is one anchor to this composition, you better bet is Reinhardt. That guy is almost a requirement to run this.
I probably would say it's a requirement because you can't really replace him with Orisa either because she doesn't have the mobility. Like Reinhardt is not
you don't
fast.
Have the pacing either.
Yeah, she's not fast. She's not too good at setting the pace, as Rob said. She sits still in one place, and this is not what this con wants to do.
No, and Reinhardt's kit is basically the end game of this composition. The ideal is you're fighting at the range where your Reinhardt can hit with his hammer. If your Reinhardt is there and your team is there, you are playing this right.
Yeah, with Orisa, she's pretty good at that sort of medium range, but she's not good at short range. Once things are on her, she can't get rid of them because she doesn't do any cleave.
No.
So
okay. That makes sense.
With the other 2 tanks, it is pretty flexible, to be honest. You could even run a Rein Orisa if you wanted to run that double shield for some reason. It's possible to do that. But you're definitely going to be looking at Xayah because Xayah is just going to be on 100 charge. She's just going to be able to, all right, you fight us, you try and fight anything, I'm going to shield it.
Her shields are going to get a lot of value.
In the moment.
Yeah, you can guarantee value out of her shields in this composition very, very often. Just it's going to happen.
And 100 charge Xayah, she pretty much does more DPS than anything in the game, not counting headshots, other than Bastion, I believe. She's ridiculous on 100 charge.
Absolutely.
So
then what do you want to complement these 2 with then, Lee? What's next?
I would like to run a hog myself. I'm not a fan of I'm missing an off tank here. I can't place it. We've got Xayah, we've got Roadhog. D.Va, yeah. I don't like running D.Va too much in this kind of comp because she's good with Winston at running that high ground advantage at diving a single target. She's not good at anchoring. She's pretty weak when it comes to anchoring. That DM lasts way too short of time to really defend.
So would you say she tends to be more of what you would call the disruption role here?
Yeah, she would disrupt the enemy team, but that's not how I personally would run this comp. I would run it into you can not fight us if you want, but you're going to lose. So,
and there's a few considerations you have to take here, and we've said that the tank choices aside from Reinhardt can be a little flexible. And I agree with you. Based on what we've talked before, the Roadhog is an incredible hero to fight at close range. He's more of that brawler. He can dish a ton of damage to anyone in front of him, and sort of in an AoE fashion too, right? This is kind of the spread. So as long as you're close to your Reinhardt, you can bring with hooks anyone into the middle of your team, which is basically a dead person, whoever it is. You can do a ton of damage. You can help your Reinhardt win the shield battle quite a bit, a little bit more than your D.Va even. But D.Va still has her merits in other regards, right? Like you said, D.Va's not necessarily the best hero to fight in that close quarters, since her damage is not anything like Reinhardt, you know what I mean? Her missiles can do a little bit of damage, but that's about it. And her mech can be vulnerable at that range. But she can still do quite a bit with her defense matrix. And if the enemy team is running something that at range, for example, that is giving your team a lot of trouble, a diva might be the only person that can deal with that sort of thing. But again, you deviate a little bit from keeping everyone in the same
The core
place
build
and running
as it
it.
were.
So it's a slightly different flavor there.
See, I much prefer the Roadhog, especially with his hook. His hook is such a valuable tool because it gives this comp a little bit of that medium range scariness. Because if something gets hooked into this not death ball style, but triple comp, because
Yeah.
everything in this is built around short range, that thing is going to be dead now.
Absolutely.
So Reinhardt and Roadhog can work together quite well. The Reinhardt can guarantee another 75 damage on top of the hook damage and the shot damage. Because he can't miss, pretty much, unless he gets moved away or they get bubbled or something like that. So he can guarantee that damage, and the Hog can, in return, get an early pick and make this a 5v6 into a triple is honestly, it's terrifying. That's one of the comps where I don't even want to attempt running a 5v6 hero save.
Yeah, and that's why the mirror matches up so well with this, right? Is because if you have your own personal Zarya, then you can kind of brawl and make this more of a decision-based chess match rather than who's going to get hooked first and can you dodge the hook at medium range, or did you get a good read on your opponents and run a ranged functioning team that actually can punish this setup quick enough to do something about it. Those are pretty much your only alternatives, is to counter it, to outplay it, or to run the mirror better and make better decisions. Because if you're getting if you're dodging the hook, you're already ahead. And if you get hooked and you can spend the Zarya charge and actually get charge out of it and get your guy or girl out of that situation, then typically you're kind of going even at that point. And you just have to basically continue to follow up on the person who's getting hooked. And yeah, it's kind of like a race to get who. I would say in the mirror comp, from what I've observed, it's a race to get the first pick, or it's a race to push the enemies, whether you're on offense or defense, off of the objective, because whoever is not holding that space is losing, because the space is going to be gained by whoever it is that needs to take it. If you stay at range too long and you don't go into the other person's space, then the pressure is lost. And it's kind of just like this weird, awkward dance off instead of like Overwatch at that point. Either that or you're just going to dry push and get ultimates. It's like, you guys are going to sit here and dance, or we're going to go,
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the style and approach, but yeah, this composition is definitely one of those that getting a pick is not required, and I think that's part of their strengths. You're not waiting on your Widowmaker to pick the backline. You're not waiting on your Tracer to stick a bomb or anything. You're just like, no, we're gonna take the fight on right now, and you guys better fight us right now.
Yeah, and that also
and
does
right here.
Yeah.
Right here, right now. Not yesterday, not today.
It's a very
tomorrow.
manly
right
comp
now.
in that sense.
Chauvinistic comp confirmed.
Yeah.
I think one of the advantages of this tool right now is it takes away from one of the things Mercy's pretty strong at, is negating that first pick. So right now, that's when you want to use res quite often, is that first pick to negate, with a lucky shot or somebody just caught slightly out of position, you can stop the Mercy from dying, get it up, and then you're not at a disadvantage. There is no chance for that here, because you're not looking for a first pick. You don't care. Anything that dies is going to die in the middle of your team, and that Mercy will not live if she even thinks about resing that. So, that's one of the key advantages, that their Mercy won't be able to do anything. And meanwhile, your Mercy is going to be surrounded by fat. There's going to be tank everywhere. If one of you dies, she can very likely get a res off with
even in the middle of the brawl. Sometimes I've seen it happen, just because it's such an impenetrable barrier. Sometimes you can't really get a lot of damage through. And like you said, I think that those 3 tank choices can be a general rule of thumb. The Reinhardt, Zarya, Roadhog, because of all of these reasons that we just talked about. They're all really good close range brawlers. All those 3 tanks love taking fights up close. They love being surrounded by other guys like that. Roadhog with the hook, just pulling it in. He loves being able to just have his Reinhardt being able to hammer. Zarya just, go to town. And even your supports are pseudo DPSs in this composition. Let's talk a little bit about those because there's a lot of flavor in the supports and a lot of utility that the supports are bringing to the build. The tanks obviously are your front line. They're gonna be that beefy damage soak that makes this composition so resilient. But the supports bring the tools for the tanks to be able to achieve that, right? One of the biggest things that this composition lacks is mobility, like we talked about. Everyone is rather slow. There's not a lot of verticality. Nobody can, climb walls or do anything fancy. I mean, Reinhardt can charge forward, but even that has to be done with some moderation, right?
One of the things I always tell my Reinhardt, unbind shift, because honestly it's just not even worth it most of the time.
Yeah, just bind it to like F12, so you consciously have to like really want to charge,
Control Alt Delete. That's when you use the ability.
It's got its uses occasionally, but it's not. You don't want to engage with it. It's not, unless from a few very specific things like Reinhardt's right against a wall or something like that. But normally it's a suicide key. Yeah. I've seen a lot of players going from Mercy to Reinhardt. They think, all right, I'll pick up Reinhardt. They forget you should never press shift because they're used to just pressing shift constantly on Mercy, and now they just can't press it at all.
Yeah, any charges that you do with Rein have to be like very short range charges that you're like doing against like the wall of the point, for example. Like somebody comes into the point and you just charge him into the payload, or you charge him into like very close. You're not trying to take him anywhere. You want to stay very close to your team. But going back to the mobility, one of the biggest tools that you can use for this is Lucio. Lucio is an amazing tool for this team just because he brings back, he puts a strength into a weakness that the team has, right? That lack of mobility. The team wants to close the gap as fast as possible and get to the point as fast as possible where they can now be at their best and force the fight into their own terms. But to do this, it's kind of hard getting to the choke with a lot of things happening or going wrong, right? There's Junkrat spamming you. There's Widow shootings. May even be a Pharah. They may be a Zenyatta throwing you a volley. And even though the composition is super resilient, you just never know. So you want to cut that time to a minimum. The time where you're not standing on the point and not fighting has to be a bare minimum. And Lucio is super good at doing this. Not to mention his healing is in an area which complements this composition even further. You want to talk a little bit about this, Lee?
Oh yeah, I mean, the way I play, I would pretty much say Lucio is a necessity for this comp to work, really. Especially if you're running an attack if you're trying to run a Zenyatta on attack. Yeah, Discord's great, but you've got no way to do anything with that Discord unless the enemy do dumb and walk into you or something like that. I think Temple of Anubis is really, the first point is really the best place to visualize how you'd play this comp. So it's like I was saying earlier, instead of flanking around, going straight to it, you want to speed boost straight to it, and then you can just sit on point, and that healing aura, they can't get any sort of sustained damage. They can't do any sort of just chipping away at you because that heal aura will just make that impossible. And then
you just stack the auras with Brigitte, right? And then you get two going.
I mean, if you want to run Brig too, I think Brig's one of them, definitely one of the most flexible ones in this comp.
Right.
So the way Brig is at the moment is a mess, but she's really good at doing damage. But if you want a little bit more of that range damage, or even if you want a little bit more short range damage, you could put a Soldier in, you could put a Reaper in, you could put a McCree in, pretty much anything, and just play that in the core of it. So literally right in the middle of your comp. And nothing's going to be able to touch that thing. Nothing will be able to get to it, as I was saying earlier. That's why Mercy can get away with a res for free, because nothing can get there.
Absolutely. You're seeing Hanzo fit that role a lot.
Especially with that Zarya at the moment. With the Zarya Hanzo combo and with no realistic way to counter it.
Right.
Because Transcendence only does the same amount of healing as Hanzo Dragon does damage. Throw a damage buff on that, you pretty much have to invest 3 ultimates to live through it, and it's just at that point not worth it.
Yeah. And the way I see the supports too is I see 3 main role differences with the supports. You have that utility support. In this case, we talked about Lucio. Zenyatta has his merits as well, but I think that Zenyatta itself fits a little better with what you said, a little more of a range comp, right? Like the Discord Orb, the style of Zenyatta fits a little better played with a Widowmaker or a McCree or a Farah, for example, compositions that want to fight a little bit at range and kind of like chip in, have some burst damage around them. In this composition, I think that Lucio tends to replace the Zenyatta because Lucio can bring something similar with his ultimate, for example, to Transcendence. They kind of like both fit that same niche. They're obviously different, but they both just add a large health pool or like a large amount of healing as a panic button in a large area. So to myself, those
Well,
ultimates can kind of be a little bit switchable.
well, Lucio doesn't add healing with his ult. He adds health pool. So
Right.
it's actually even better with this because you
Right.
can use this just as you engage. So you don't use it as an engage tool. You use it as you engage when you hit the enemy,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have like 1,000 health per tank. So they're not going to be able to melt through that. And
No,
because you're not really caring about what you're killing. You're just killing whatever's in front of you. Zenyatta's not that strong because you might be killing 2 or 3 things at a time because you have the cleave to do that.
Right. And
With
Lucio,
Lucio,
on top of that, has the mobility to be on the point. You don't have to worry about too much like getting hit by random things. You can just be climbing up walls and being like, oh, well, try to catch me if you can.
and another advantage of that Lucio ult is you can use like mercy damage buff. You don't have to heal then because there's just going to be that much health. What's the point?
Yeah, you have that
know?
window to utilize it, right?
So you can throw even more damage for free.
Right.
It's such a good, if you play it correctly, that ultimate is 10 times better in this comp than trans ever would be.
And
Absolutely.
I wanna touch on that. I'm glad you mentioned that, Lee, because I think that honestly is one of the most potent arguments against why people are not approaching this with an Ana in mind, is because you're able to flip the switch of damage boosting for the sake of the front of the line or the back of the line or whatever you have access to, and also play Mercy safer in that moment, not just because she has more health, but because now she's also enabling the team as well as Lucio. And with Ana, you're basically just going to be blocking the healing, which they're honestly not really needing in that moment. So if both teams mirror and drop the beat, as it were, the Ana's going to get a hell of a lot less value because Mercy's going to be pumping in more damage, and you're just going to eat through the decaying barriers 10 or actually about 30% faster, believe it or not, with the damage boost on one of the ends, okay? And it's going to be exacerbated if that damage boost is going into a fully charged Zarya, which will happen. And
you can pretty much presume in this comp Zai is under charge. Just presume
yeah,
Zai is full.
I mean, you just put your money in the bank, like cash it in at Russia International Airport, okay? It's going to come in. That plane's coming all the way home. The only other thing that I would say in the category of if you would want to run the comp as you guys had said, we might be talking, I might be jumping the gun a little bit for styles and approaches and mods and hybrids on this build, but personally, in every stretch outside of this big Lucio thing and all of the barriers, on paper, Ana should be doing really well with this build, and it just doesn't work because you need that utility of the Lucio, right?
I think that Lucio and Zenyatta are one category of healer, and like we said, that utility. But let's talk about Ana and the other category of healing, which I think is the main healer. And in that category, we're talking about Mercy. We can put in a Moira in here as well. She can work well in this composition. And you could make an argument for Ana, but I'll tell you my thoughts about Ana. With Mercy and with Moira, you have the ability to have a very consistent heal that you're not to worry about. You don't have to finesse this heal, right? With Moira, you just spray and pray and just throw your orb and the healing is done, right? Everyone's going to be around you. You don't have to do much that, just be around the team and use your abilities. With Mercy, likewise the same. You pick the target that needs to be healed. You just hold the button. Very consistent. No problems done. With Ana, on the other hand, I think that you can get away with an Ana, especially on the ladder. No questions asked. The nano boost can be incredibly dangerous. Put on a Reinhardt. Her nade can be very useful. The sleep dart can be clutch in certain moments. But her healing compared to the other ones requires aiming and finesse, right? And these battles are gonna be incredibly hectic. Everyone's gonna be on top of everyone. There's gonna be damage flying all over the place. You're not gonna have a lot of mobility or places to go and
So
hide so
vulnerable.
that you can just
Hmm.
snipe and shoot. You know what I mean? You have to be on the point with the team. And Mercy and Mora, for example, just have a little bit of a better kit for that close range battle, right? With Mora, you can disappear and reappear somewhere else if things get too hairy. Your AoE heals are awesome for that sort of environment. With Mercy, you can be flying all over the place and kind of have some sort of mobility, and the rest can be super valuable to just bring back a full
Right.
life tank, which is just so
Hmm.
much health, right? Lee, what do you think?
Well, if you just look at the shift key of each of those characters, that's essentially their safety button. That's if something is trying to murder me, what do I do about this? Mercy, 2-second guardian angel. She can just leave. She doesn't care. Moira can just fade away. Anna has to hit a sleep dart. That is a very hard projectile to land. It
Especially
takes a
in
lot
the
of skill.
environment we're gonna be
And it's
fighting.
conditional.
Hmm. So it can be denied as well. It can be
Right.
denied with bubbles. It can be denied with deflects. You can put yourself to sleep if you're not careful, depending on what you're playing. But even in this
Right.
very specific comp, there's going to be that much damage flying around. Chances are that thing's going to get woken up pretty much instantly anyway. If you're
Mm-hmm.
playing with your team, if you're playing away from your team, then you're not going to be able to do the amount of healing you need to do. She just really
Right.
doesn't fit well. And until Mercy doesn't have as much utility as she does, I doubt she ever will again. Because right now, if you look at her ultimate, yeah, Nano Boost is really good. Nano is awesome to have,
It's
but
fantastic. Yeah.
it's not as good as Valk damage buff. I'd rather have a Valk damage buff any day because then the whole team is doing ridiculous amounts of damage.
It's an
Absolutely.
Orissa's ult on a stick, you know?
Pretty much, slightly
And a
less damage
flying
buff, but
stick.
and a flying stick that's very hard to kill.
Yeah.
It's
And you
That
can flip
dodges
between,
damage.
the heal off of it as well. So Val
as and when needed.
and on top of that, like you have to understand if you're running 3 supports and 3 really, really, really beefy targets, or rather, even when we get into the adjustment stage, running 2 supports and 3 super beefy targets, sometimes an off tank in the face of a DPS, or other times just a DPS, just raw. These supports are getting ultimates at ridiculous rates because of
Mhm.
how much damage is getting interchanged in such a short window of time. And then the capability of both Zarya and Reinhardt to complement one another in order to mitigate damage to help you get back up to pad them, as it were. And by padding them, I just mean getting them back to their cap of their health. So they can just willfully go in somewhere and drop the barriers or not use them, take some damage and flip them back up just to soak and get the supports, their ult charge. And especially in these, I think the pugs that you were mentioning at the top of the show, pickup groups or even just coaching sessions, you're going to actually see a lot more coordination with 6-stack groups of people kind of just like rotating in front of damage so that you can
Mhm.
kind of keep the flow going, making sure that Mercy's either damage boosting or getting a heal off. Lucio's just going to arbitrarily get stuff all the time. And if he's not getting value by gaining ultimate, he's getting you value by the positional war and spacing.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered a good chunk of this. I want to make sure we get to the other things, and we can kind of circle back if we have to.
Sure.
Let's talk
I
about
mean,
that
this is
flex spot, Andres.
yeah. Let's talk about the flex spot because that part is really important too. I think
Right.
that with the existence of Brigitte herself has given birth to compositions like this. Brigitte is a really interesting hero in the sense that yeah, she's a support, but she's not like a Lucio. She's not like a Mercy. She's this support, this tanky support that is really good at brawls, close range brawls, something that a lot of the other supports have been, always known to be bad at, right? That's why
Mm-hmm.
Tracers and Genjis would love being on top of them because the second you can get them by yourself in the back line, you usually would win that duel. But not with Brigitte anymore. And her kit itself brings a lot of utility to this type of composition. First of all, she's like a mini Reinhardt. She swings her flail, she deals a ton of damage. She has a mini shield that can act as protection in a pinch to any one of your supports, even your tanks. She brings a ton of utility with the stun, allowing your Reinhardt to win a lot of little skirmishes, shield battles, allowing you to get that Earth Shatter in, etc. And her ultimate, much like Lucio, adds a shit ton of health to your health pool. So, and it's permanent too. So as long as you're pressing Q, your team is just
100 armor,
beefier.
boys and girls.
It's a fantastic hero to run this comp. But again, she can be one of the most flexible spots just because as long as you have everything else, the core of the team is pretty much there. You can do exactly the strategy we've been talking about. But Brigitte is just an awesome complement. I think it works really well and makes it a lot stronger. But Lee, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. For my playstyle, I'd say Mercy Lucio Reinhardt is pretty much a necessity to run this composition because one of the interesting things is this is one of the only times I would lay a support ult. So in coaching, we pretty much always say never lay a support ult. Just don't. But this is the one time with putting that large amount of health pool and then throwing on that damage buff, you can just layer them and it's just a massively good combo. And with that combo and then how they work well together with mobility and such, the last spot, well, yes, traditionally you run a Brig because Brig is really strong at that brawl, and especially at singling out a single target, especially in this, you're going to bully the enemy Reinhardt so hard. You can bully him even more and just stun him for a second, he's dead.
It's like the nightmare full of Reinhardts, a Brigitte and another Reinhardt on top of him.
Please no. But in that spot, you could even then go to a quad tank if you wanted to go towards that even beefier. This is where Roadhog would come into his own with his own healing. Or you could put a DPS on there, you could put a soldier on there, you could put anything you wanted to put in there. It will generally work as long as it's not, you could even run Widow. You can pretty much run anything in this comp on that final support slot because the core of how you play is already set up. It's not like swapping out Reinhardt and not having that shield anymore. You have what you need to run it.
Yeah. I was going to mention, too, kind of like why Hanzo is kind of filling that extra role just before we kind of get into more options.
Sure.
Because I feel like the reason that Hanzo is kind of like the de facto extra piece besides Brigitte is like the two options is that Hanzo is not only just really good at what he does, he's also just really good at what other people do in addition to that. And he's also really synergistic with what your team wants to do in the first place, as far as the core build's concerned. And what I mean by that is he works well with shatters. He works well with beat drops. He works super well with speed boosts. He works amazing with damage boosts. And he has both burst and long mid-range damage, as well as short-range damage.
And that's not even to mention the Wombo combo.
Right.
Yeah, that's not even mentioning the
Resident Sleeper combo.
The Resident Sleeper Black Hole Dragon. So, I mean, there's so many things that people like to see layered up with Hanzo, but the fact of the matter is he deals with actually everything. He breaks shields. He sets up plays. He gets picks when your team isn't designed to do that. He can duel anyone in the game, and his damage fall off is only predicated on how long he's holding down the button rather than when or how far away something is from his kit. And then if he happens to get in trouble, he can bail himself out by having A, verticality, and B, the disengage. So I'm not saying that necessarily Hanzo is so ridiculous that Blizzard needs to address it, but I am telling you that within this current build of the game, with all of the other moving parts, that Hanzo is very strong with those moving parts. Because I think a lot of the things that he does is so synergized with this setup that he's just too flexible, if that makes sense. He's too flexible with everything else.
He's not specialized.
And that's why he's
anymore.
Considered. Yeah, he's no longer a narrow specialized hero. He's very generalized. And he kind of took over both what Soldier and McCree had kind of in their head-to-head, as well as Reaper, and he just took over all three.
I wouldn't say
And,
Reaper, but I would say that he has gotten a
that's
lot of the
fair.
spotlight for McCree and Soldier. Soldier for
McCree and
sure.
Soldier
he
for sure.
he has fallen
Yeah.
off the face of the earth. Between Hanzo and Widowmaker, they've made sure that everyone has forgotten about Soldier. But yeah, I do agree with
unfortunately.
you, Rob. Hanzo can be a really good fit in the composition. He naturally just fits really well. He can take the close range brawls. He can use Storm Arrow to break those shields. He can use the wombo combo with Zarya. We already talked with Lee about how strong Zarya is in the composition. So if you're already running a Zarya, getting that Hanzo instead of the Brigitte can add extra firepower and add the range that you're missing. Like we said, we don't. This composition likes taking the fight up close, so it lacks a lot of range. So putting one hero that can maybe complement you there can be very useful sometimes. In the Overwatch League, we've actually seen a lot of Widowmaker being played with this composition. They're letting the Brigitte go in terms of getting the Widow, so they can guarantee that at least they'll have a counter to the enemy Widow, which at that level of play, you have to respect
range
the enemy
pressure.
Widow, right? They will
Yeah.
get the shots on your DPS. When you're in the ladder, you can kind of, get away with protecting your DPS. The Widows might not be good enough to like hit the shot through the shield into the head. But when you're playing in Spine, the story is a little bit different. And
I mean, as much as you're kind of joking there, Widows at high levels can pretty much time for a puts. Like, they see the patterns in how a Reinhardt will drop his shield for
Right.
whatever stimulus he's getting, and then they
Yeah.
will abuse that.
yeah,
So you really do have to respect Widow. Even at GM, that happens. I've had that happen to me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't notice. And
Right.
it happened to me today. You have to, if the enemy have a Widow, that is one of what we were saying earlier, the weaknesses is range. And if they play range battle with a Widow, they can get picks consistently.
especially if it's
That's
a Widow
what's scary.
that knows what they're
Then you
doing.
don't have healing.
Yeah, and they can rotate. They can find the flank on your healers. Take down your Moira. Take down your Mercy. Taking
Right.
down the Mercy at the beginning of the fight is
That's
a huge
huge.
crutch against this composition. Likewise with the Lucio, like they're still squishy, so they're still vulnerable to high amounts of bursts from a skilled player. Or just maybe random damage that can happen. But
Or maybe even Zarya. Zarya, when she's damage buff, Widow, when she's damage buff, can one shot Zarya with
Yeah.
a headshot too. So
yeah,
taking
yeah,
Zarya out of
two
the-
headshots is enough to take down a Zarya.
even with damage buff, it's one. Damage buff that Widow is one headshot,
Oh,
She's gone.
interesting. Wow.
I think. Yeah, it's
And
300 plus 30%. 300 plus 30%.
Maybe
so
with Discord.
it might be with like a tiny little sliver of damage on top of that. So
Yeah.
if you
I will
tickle
crunch numbers. You guys can talk other stuff. Keep going. I'll crunch the numbers. We'll make sure we get a live response here.
But absolutely, taking a Hanzo, taking a Widowmaker can be valid in this spot. Taking a fourth tank can be valid. Brigitte, like we said, can be a huge asset. I think that sometimes you can even see people take a Moira and a Mercy both at the same time, and just for an intense amount of healing. Coalescence is still a useful ultimate that doesn't overlap with Mercy's ultimate, so you can sometimes see that as well. I think that they're definitely in the last healing spot. That's the most flexibility that you'll find.
So with my playstyle, I honestly prefer going up to a quad tank at that point than rather than having a DPS. But honestly, with Hanzo in his current state, it's just too.
You can't complain about it.
You can't complain with having Hanzo. I played today and I had God Hanzo. He's the only reason we won. We should have lost that game and he pulled out 5k. No ultimate, just headshots. Just I am not going to complain at this man.
The last thing I want to touch on this comp before we finish off, though, is a little bit of the play style and also some of the weaknesses that you can exploit, because there are some counters to this composition. We've seen it happen. This is not, a flawless comp that can always win. There are ways to defeat it, so I did want to touch on that a little bit. But we've already said that they like taking it up close. They like forcing the fight. Don't dilly-dally at the choke points. You're not trying to wait for picks. Go straight to the point. I think that this composition really shines specifically on 2CP. Things like Hanamura, Horizon Lunar Colony, Anubis, for example. Sometimes on control maps can be pretty good, but I think 2CP is where the strengths really get highlighted because you ignore all of the choke points, which are usually, contention points in these maps. You take the fight to the point, and more than that, after you're an attack on a 2CP map, it's a battle for resilience, right? You're standing on the point, you're vulnerable, and you need heroes that can contest that. Reinhardt has historically been one of the best heroes to get this job done. Winston can sometimes do it too. But when you have your entire team being able to stand on the point, that's probably the strongest that your team will be at that moment. And specifically in the second point, it can be really effective because we know all about stall mechanics. We know that some teams can bring back the fight by slowly wearing down the attacking team until they get back control of the point. But this composition can fight for a really long time with under heavy fire, right? And that's exactly what you need in that kind of map. You want to add anything here?
No, you're pretty much right. Playing against this comp, play range or play very good things that are very good at destroying things in a group. So Junkrat's Xayah grab is essentially a death sentence for this comp. And they have a lot of, because there's going to be a lot of damage flying around, you can get quite high charge and you can get a grab pretty quickly off that Roadhog, off that D.Va, off that Xayah.
Right.
Reinhardt, if he's brawling, because tanks are still meat shields. So if they're not having an actual shield, you can get a lot of ult charge off them. So this is the kind of comp where a lot of ults are going to be flying around. So if you're not playing a mirror comp, you can rely on your Xayah Hanzo, and you can just. There's no way, like I was saying, that there's no way you can counter that at this point because the trans doesn't heal enough, and you have to drop at least 2 or 3 ultimates. And at that point, you're going to want to take the ultimate economy.
Yes.
Now, Lee, if you're running up against a mirror of this, for example, or even just a mirror of the core build, what are your thoughts on like running something a little bit off kilter like a Sombra or a Doomfist? Because a lot of the disruption that Sombra has to offer seems really good on paper, especially with disrupting the Lucio ultimates, the Graviton, the Zarya bubbles, the Reinhardt shields, and then you also have the flip side. You have the Doomfist that's able to displace somebody similar to Roadhog, just in the reverse fashion.
Well, if I'm presuming a perfect player, Sombra's awesome to have for cancelling ultimates. However, this comp doesn't rely on abilities. This comp doesn't really rely on any sort of hook. It doesn't rely on shield. It doesn't rely on one character's abilities. If you take out if you hack Lucio, whatever, we've got Mercy still. We've still got Brig. Let's presume we're running a normal. Let's presume that we're running Reinhardt, Xayah, Hog, Lucio, Brig, Mercy. Let's presume we're running that.
Yeah, we're not talking ladder scenarios here, right? We're talking like legitimate team building.
But I think Sombra, but I don't think a perfect Sombra exists yet. They still don't have the ability to consistently do that. I think if it's possible, Sombra would be good, but I don't think she can make up for the damage loss she takes by taking her over a DPS. She's no longer really good enough for that support role, and she's clearly not a tank.
And it's a good point to be made because, like you said, this team is not trying to win through any abilities or picks. It's literally winning through positioning and health pool. Is just because it's so good at just putting itself in where it needs to be, and it forces the team to have to slowly wear it down. Even if you don't kill a single person, more than likely you will get a tick just because the enemy team just can't fight you right away at the end, at the point, right? They have to like find their way in or slowly wear you down before they can even attempt to like go fight you on their own terms. So you're only always kind of like fighting for the objective without needing any abilities or picks in that sense. One hero that I have seen be a huge crutch to this composition though is Junkrat. Junkrat can be the bane of this comp. Not only because the spam that he can lob grenades into the point and create like this chaos for this team. It's very hard to dodge his attacks. Your traps get a lot of value in the hecticness of the fight. But moreover than that, just like you said, Lee, they're old batteries. You can load your ultimate so fast against this composition, and especially heroes like Junkrat that are just constantly spamming damage and hitting 2-3 targets with the explosions can build their tire almost every fight.
Probably more than every fight, to be honest. I've
Yeah,
seen Junkers have two in a fight if it was
sometimes
a long
two.
fight. It's
Absolutely.
ridiculous.
And if you watch Overwatch League, especially like the finals, the teams that were really good at countering this comp always had a Junkrat with them, and that tire was the defining factor. As the team was approaching, as they were trying to get the fight on the point, the Junkrat would just wait for until they were right at the point and just tire them. And like if you take down two supports or take down one tank and a support, even sometimes just taking out the Reinhardt by itself would be enough to end the fight right then and there. And because the Junkrat would have the tire almost every fight, it was like an uphill battle for this composition. So it's something really to watch out for. If you're a good Junkrat and you see this composition, buddy, is your time to shine.
I have a quick update on the damage for the Zarya Widowmaker / getting Mercy boosted. It is 390 damage.
Yeah, so a skittle of damage will do it.
If you melee her, she's dead.
Yeah. So if she's and in this kind of team comp, you can pretty much presume she's not going to be 100% health. So
and depending on how the damage is stacked up, obviously not including armor, I'm not 100% sure if the Discord orb applies to the non-damage boosted damage, and you just add it as an arbitrary modification on the core damage, or if you modify it based off of the totality.
I believe it's off the totality. I think it's because mercy damage buff is done to the bullet. If you imagine it as an actual bullet instead of just a line that's drawn in game,
right?
It's done to the bullet as it leaves the gun, and then however much damage it should do is then more. I believe.
Right, and so I crunched the numbers for both, just in case, and it is 480 if you just add the 90 on top. And then if you do, basically what you didn't end up doing is you do the 120 and you multiply it by 2.5, which is the modifier for Widow, right? And that's what the headshot damage is. 120 times 2.5. And then you multiply that by 1.3 twice. And that comes up to about 507. So you're going to be, you're setting Reinhardt's at like 100 health with Discord damage boost, and that's not including nano.
I think if that's how much damage it does, that should kill him, because he has not counting any, because his armor only blocks 5 damage, because it's up to 5 for every damage applied. So that should, actually, if that's right, I think that should kill him. I think we're both right.
It's a lot of resources to put into one thing, but you'd be surprised at how often this happens when you're running Zen Mercy with a Widowmaker. It happens a lot.
I mean, that's the point of Discord. You kill the thing with Discord.
Yeah, exactly. So, Lee, is there anything else you really want to cover in this comp? Maybe just some off-kilter things, or even kind of like how you want to approach this within your solo duo games, if this is what the team is okay with running, and how you want to maybe adjust this to more of a disorganized practice.
The thing is, this comp thrives in disorganization. This is a very... as long as you're not playing anything like, so we tried to play it in the pugs I was on about earlier, where I was playing in my tournament server. We tried to run this with us cycling the tanks off on and off point. The issue was we just weren't coordinated enough to do that. If you play it as just a total brawler, it's really good in disorganized, because you don't have to care what you're killing. You're just killing whatever's in your reach. You know, Reinhardt just swings, hog hooks whatever, Zarya just beams whatever's in front of her. You know, you don't have to care. So it's really good in a disorganized environment as well.
The only thing that you have to get everyone on the same page is that they have to go to the point and fight from the point. As long as your team can do this, after that, you know, it's very free form.
Which for some of you out there is actually quite a big ask. So keep that in mind. Okay?
And the thing is that this is a mindset and a style, and sometimes you're stuck in a different style, right? From playing, if you're like a person that plays maybe a lot of Widow or plays a lot of Zenyatta, for example, you might not just be used to running into the point without caring about anything else, right? And you have that tendency of like, no, we have to kind of like fight over here, see what's happening. But with this comp, you have to be a free soul, man. Very carefree. You're just gonna rush to the point and, you know, improvise once we get there.
All right, well, I think that's going to close out our discussion if we got nothing else to really cover. I will say that we do have about 2 minutes if you want to give just kind of like your first impression. Kind of you have the floor, Lee, just to kind of tell us what you think about Symmetra and moving forward with her current build, or maybe like if you've tested her with this kind of composition and pugs and
I
what
did
you're looking to do.
Well, we haven't played her in pugs, but I did a lot of testing with my friend Dedicated Medic. She was actually on the front page on the r/Overwatch subreddit. If you saw it, we had a few tests on there. At the moment, she's very buggy, but let's just discount the bugs because let's hope they'll be fixed. Fingers crossed, right? One day, Blizzard, one day. I won't mention the Reinhardt bug. Hey, at least they're actually fixing Reinhardt.
They said they
Slowly
were
but surely.
from the ground up, so rejoice.
Yeah, woo. I think it's a good change for her, though. It's a good change.
Textured sundials.
It's a good change for her because her new teleporter is pretty strong. At the moment, teleporter is not really that strong except for a few scenarios. The new teleporter allows you to be a lot more inventive with how you use it. So there's clips of Reinhardt's being teleported behind for a 180 shatter and things like, and you can do a lot of interesting things with the teleporter. Her new gun, if it gets fixed so you can't do like 400 DPS because it's busted at the moment. That's a really interesting way. It's kind of like Zaya's beam, and it rewards you being more accurate. So the better you are with her, the better you can use her, the more damage you can do, just the raw numbers. Which is, again, it rewards good aim, which is a good thing. The more the game rewards you for being good and not for like at the moment, that's why I kind of have an issue with Brig. It doesn't reward you for being good; it rewards you for pressing a button. You get a free stun on the Reinhardt. There's nothing he can do.
And as I'm just going to test, the play is not only rewarding for being accurate, but it's just generally it's really fun to play. And I think that's really important for games like Overwatch. It's you need something that has lots of brevity to it that you can play over a long period of time. The kit doesn't get old very quickly and rewards you for doing something interactive that will constantly change the style of play.
I mean, I've been playing Reinhardt for 2 years at this point, so And I think another very important thing
I will say
another part. Go on.
I will say with the new Symmetra, something that I really like is the teleporter is giving life to strategies that were really hard to pull off before. Like in the PTR, we were already seeing it. For example, the Orisa Bastion, kind of like Card of Doom, gets to a whole new level with the teleporter because you can be in the payload at one point and then you can literally teleport your entire team to the high ground, Orisa and Bastion included, and suddenly you have this mobile turret where every like 6 seconds you can just keep switching the location and just keep putting it on different positions, which
you can get real creative.
Yeah, and before this was one of the biggest weaknesses of this comp is like, hey, we have all this firepower shielded that it's really hard to take out, but we can't really move it anywhere. But now with this, is like, oh, no problem. Just after a few intervals, you can keep switching locations based only on your teleport. You don't even have to walk to places. High ground becomes attainable for Orisa for the first time. She gets to see the top of the shuttle of Gibraltar for the first time in her life, dude.
One of the best things about the teleporter is the statue on Point of King. You see where I'm going here.
Oh, yeah.
You can put a Bastion and an Orisa up there. That's gonna be fun. It's not really that useful, but it's funny.
All right, we can't be giving people ideas now, okay?
Yeah, we've said too much.
We've said too much on our strats. We're getting too revealed. We're gonna get out of here. But yeah, Lee, give us any more final thoughts, and then we can kind of close it out here.
I think we covered most. Again, if you've come across this comp and you're not wanting to mirror comp it, you just need to run that Junkrat and play the range battle until you can engage because they've lost someone. They've lost one of those core 3, Reinhardt, Lucio, or Mercy. That's what you're waiting on with this comp.
Yeah.
If they lose one of those 3, you can really abuse them for that.
And try to look for when they're mobilizing. I know that when you're playing this comp, right, it's still very hard because it's still a lot of health and they're moving fast with the Lucio into the point. but that's probably one of their most vulnerable spots when they're moving in and their supports are kind of like straggling a little bit behind. If you can separate them somehow, like a Maywall can sometimes work really well. A Pharah boop, a Junkrat boop, any boop that might mess up their entrance like that, or any kind of burst that you can sneak in as they're strolling into the point can really disrupt. And if you can chain ultimates like the Junkrat tire as they're coming in, it can be quite good against it too.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we got some people to thank, including our guests, which we will get to here at the end. Special thanks to our Diamond sponsors on patreon.com/Omnic Lab. I almost promoted my the other podcast. Sorry, guys. Omnic Lab. And we have some people here that have been sponsoring us at the top level, so let's get through them. We have Aiden C., Ben K., Britt Miss, Krista Playa, Durandal, Ginger Sasquatch, Golden Soldier A, Great Root Bear, Jan Jingle, Jeff D, Lissum, Never Clutch, Ray, Roger B, Ricky Tiki Shazir, Terry F, Top Score Solutions, and Tragic Zach. We have no new patrons this week, but if you were to pledge, we will shout you out on the show. And we also have 2 new iTunes reviews, one from USA, or 2 from USA, 92 Supersonics and Avarish. Thank you guys so much for your reviews. Hardcore Xbox player and someone just running a thank you for the show and really wants his Rhine Daddy episode, apparently, is what he's asking in the postscript. I'm not saying that more than once, but you guys can infer what I'm in. I don't know what anymore. Let's just keep going. I've already lost my mind with this review. Thank you guys for your iTunes reviews. It's great for helping us out. Although iTunes is kind of having its weird heyday right now with podcasts and disrupting them, we're still banking on something being fixed in the future. So please keep those iTunes reviews coming. It is the best way to support your creators that you currently listen to regularly, besides listening, is just giving them a 5-star iTunes review and letting them know what their feedback is, what your feedback is for the show. If you guys want to support us financially, Patreon's the way to go. Or you could be a sub on our Twitch affiliate page and get a Omnic Lab hype icon to sport in your Discord or Twitch chats of choice. If you want to follow the show, you can go to twitter.com/OmnicLab. You can go to the website, omniclab.com/links to find anything else. We've got merch. We've got a Patreon. We've got Twitch. We've got YouTube. We've got an email if you want to send those in. We got a Discord server if you want to submit questions. Thanks again for listening to episode 108. Let's get out of here. Andres, where can people at home find the lovely Georgia Peach?
If you want to find me, you can personally find me on Twitter at iPlayGames. You can spell that IPLAI Games. I'm there.
When you can't find Andres getting distracted with World Cup and watching his Colombians play, you can find the UK resident LeeBomb where?
You can find me on twitter.com/WithingtonLee. You can find me on the Cavalry Podcast at discord.me/the Cavalry, or the feed if you want to listen in. I did start a new podcast called Talk the Loss. That's also discord.me/Talk the Loss. We're still kind of trying to get a second episode. Kind of hard to get us all at the same time, unfortunately.
Yeah, Ben.
WoW's Bootcamp as well. I'm pretty active in WoW's because that's where I started out my Overwatch career, essentially.
And Lee is in more Overwatch Discords than he would like to admit. So if you ping him, you'll probably get him.
I actually hit the limit of Discord servers recently. I have a lot of node servers. There's a 100 server limit. The more you know. And the final place you can find me is where I normally hang out is Discord Community Throwdown. So that'd be discord.me/Discord Throwdown. It's the tournament. I run with a few other people. We produce it. We've got some matches. We're nearly at the finals. Yay!
Nice,
exciting! Go check it out. It's a great way to learn as well. Not just watching your own VODs, watching other top players play in that tournament can be very beneficial.
I mean,
especially
at the
if
moment,
you can kind of get in there and listen to comms from the casters.
Yeah, we're not looking at too much at high level players, but maybe next season. And we do also host pugs with I play at the pugs pretty much every time long. And so you can come play. We host them like every week, I think, if we're looking at doing now. But it's pretty active. There's nearly always something going on.
And chances are there's going to be a game night with somebody's podcast this weekend, so you guys can go check those out in pretty much any podcast Discord out there. Thanks again for tuning in to episode 108. If you want to find me, I'm at NotRob on the Twitterverse, and that's the only thing I'm going to promote this week. I got a Villains Chosen podcast, but it's about Hearthstone. If you like Hearthstone, you'll find it. So there you go. Thanks again. Don't be a lab rat. Be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week. Shout out to Twitch chat. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Throw some pog gems in the chat. Just cause.
All them poggers. Lee, it's been great having you, man.
Great being here, man. My turn.
We'll be sure to we'll ping in stuff, little shenanigans on Twitterverse, and I've been trying to get it out on YouTube as well. So if you want to promote the YouTube VOD in any stretch for any of your coaching gigs, if they want to know more about the specific comp, you can just shuffle them over there. Later, guys. Bye, chat. See you guys.
Bye.
See ya. Jazz hands.